You cannot change your DNA, right? But you can change the markers that are inside of the epigenetics that are being passed down. And so they're still studying that, and you can research that. But to just have an understanding that you may be able to go into these markers, and that is the approach that I use. That's going to vary. Like maybe somebody else has another way. But for me, even before I knew I was going into the epigenetic memory, my ancestral healings that I was conducting with so many, I didn't have a true understanding of why it was working, but I knew it was working because I could see what it was doing to these people that were connecting with me and having these sessions with me. And then the words and the testimonies and the reviews that I would receive after, I knew that it was powerful and impactful. And it wasn't until I really had a conversation with someone who had a PhD in biology and all of this, like medical, scientific, science things, is whenever he heard my story and he said, hold on, hold on, hold on. And he was like, I think I understand what's going on here. And when he began to explain more about the epigenetics and the markers, and he's like, I think this is what you're doing.
Welcome to Hopeful and Wholesome, the show where ambitious women come home to their bodies. I'm your host, Hope Pedraza, and I'm a functional practitioner, human design guide, and expert on all things energy, and your partner in decoding the language of your body. This is your space to reconnect with your body's wisdom, reclaim your energy, and rise into alignment in your health, your business, and your life. Because thriving isn't about pushing harder, it's about learning to listen deeper. So let's dive in because your next breakthrough starts right now. Hey y'all, welcome back to Hopeful and Wholesome. Today I have on the show Mandy Valadez, and Mandy stepped out of a religious cult in 2018, and what followed was a really unraveling and then powerful reawakening for her. Through years of deep inner work, she came home to herself piece by piece, and now she offers that same space of healing for others who want to find their way. And whether they carry scars of escaping cult or simply just wanting to reconnect with their inner truth, Mandy guides them back to a safer, more authentic relationship with their body, soul, and sense of self, as she is a shamanic ancestral healer. She helps guide you to a relationship with your elder ancestors that hold power and healing for your present bloodline. And we are talking all about ancestral healing today. And I love this topic so much. So Mandy was kind enough to give me a session before we recorded this episode just to be able to experience it for myself. And we talk a little bit about that in the episode. But Mandy really has a gift. And as you know by now, if you've listened to the episodes enough, the podcast, then you know that I really am a firm believer in everyone's unique spiritual gifts and everyone's unique gifts that they're here. And I really think that Mandy is displaying hers in the best possible way. And she's so knowledgeable and has so much experience in her own body with this and just bringing it to light to the collective. And I really think this episode is for everyone. And so before you turn your blinders on and you think this is going to be a weird conversation, I ask you to open your mind and your heart because Mandy has a lot to teach us, just like our ancestors do. And there's so much wisdom in this conversation. And it's another one of those conversations that bridges the gap between science and spirituality, believe it or not. And Mandy's going to bring that to life. So let's jump in.
All right, y'all, I'm here with Mandy. Thanks so much for joining us today, Mandy.
Thank you. I'm so excited to share about ancestral healings and whatever else conversational it flows into.
Yes, me too. Me too. And as I mentioned before we hit record, this is a whole new conversation. We haven't talked about this on the show. And so I kind of wanted to set the stage for the listeners, just for those, maybe this is a new term, like ancestral healing is a new term, or maybe they've heard about it and don't really know what it is. But can you give just kind of, I guess, an overview? What is ancestral healing and why, how is it helpful to us as we grow as humans?
It's extremely important, especially if you are, guided into spirituality and healing internally, holistically. It's going to be extremely potent and magical for the fact that we're using science and we're using spirituality and we're combining both of them. So this is something that's fantastic because it's going to give you more of an understanding of the why it works, especially for those that want to kind of are into more science and they want to combine those, it's going to give you more of an effect of the reasons why it's backed up by a little bit of science. And it's going to go into the epigenetic memory, which is a new science term as well that they're still working in. But ancestral healing, we're going to go into your bloodline. So if you have blood and if you're a human, this is going to be effective for you because we all come from generations and generations of those that have come before us, whether we know their names or we don't. And they live inside of us. And so ancestral healing is bringing an awareness, an acceptance, and a validation to the stories that we carry inside of our bodies, and especially in the epigenetic memory, because that's being passed down over and over and over. And when somebody chooses to go into ancestral healing and into this precise holistic healing, you're going to go into those stories and you're going to be able to heal or validate or begin processing the stories of your ancestors so that you no longer are going to continue to pass down these certain epigenetic memory that lives inside of you. You're going to be able to turn a page and it's almost like you're able to have a choice because so many of your ancestors, they didn't get that choice.
Yeah, I love that explanation. It's so good. And I mean, you're speaking my language because I'm all about the intersection of science and spirituality. And that's the work I do too. And we talk about that a lot on the show. And I wanted to touch on that for a second. When you mentioned epigenetics and you mentioned that a few times, can you explain that part of it, like the science part and what you mean by epigenetics and how that is like what kind of the science side of this is and how that's helping with the healing process?
Because scientists now know that your epigenetics carry markers inside of your genes. And so they say you cannot change your DNA, right? But you can change the markers that are inside of the epigenetics that are being passed down. And so they're still studying that, and you can research that. But to just have an understanding that you may be able to go into these markers, and that is the approach that I use. That's going to vary. Like maybe somebody else has another way. But for me, even before I knew I was going into the epigenetic memory, my ancestral healings that I was conducting with so many, I didn't have a true understanding of why it was working, but I knew it was working because I could see what it was doing to these people that were connecting with me and having these sessions with me. And then the words and the testimonies and the reviews that I would receive after, I knew that it was powerful and impactful. And it wasn't until I really had a conversation with someone who had a PhD in biology and all of this, like medical, scientific, science things, is whenever he heard my story and he said, hold on. And he was like, I think I understand what's going on here. And when he began to explain more about the epigenetics and the markers, and he's like, I think this is what you're doing. He said, some way, somehow you have found a way to go into the epigenetics of these people. And that's why it's working, because now they're starting to unwind. He said it's like something that's like, either it's blocked or it's unblocked, and I'm doing the opposite. So if something needs to be unblocked in this memory, he's like, you're going in and you're unblocking it, or vice versa. And he said, and it's doing something physically in the body. And it was eye-opening to me because it's like deep down inside, I wanted to know more of how and why this was actually working, because I knew spiritually it was working.
Right.
And a lot of spiritual workers and people that are really spiritual are coming at me for like, that are wanting to do these sessions, and they just know it works. Right. But for those that wanted to have more of an understanding of how, like, I want to know how, and like, we may never know how, right? There are just some things that you'll never have an explanation for, but you can feel the effects. Sure. And so after having this amazing discussion with him, which I do have that discussion with him on my podcast, or on his podcast, sorry, but I do have it on like links on my social medias, because it was so eye-opening to see his take on it, of like really like dissecting my method and my approach, and him being like, oh my gosh, like you're really, this is what it could be. And so I love it. I love it.
Yeah, yeah. No, and it makes a lot of sense. And I do think that, with a lot of these more spiritual and energetic modalities, it is helpful to have that like analytical lens to look at it through. And like that validation, you're like, I know it works, but now you have the data. Like there is data now that's showing me, oh, this is why it works. Because for those, and I say this all the time, nothing against men, but a lot of times men, especially in the work I do too, it's like men are very analytical and they need proof. And not just men, there are plenty of women too, but for those analytical minds where it's like, okay, I get it, you're saying it, and you've got all these people saying that it works, but why? And it's nice to have that data to back it up. And I think, as maybe what's the word I'm looking for? Like alternative as this may be, or as like woo, as some people might see this as, their science has proven, and this is like from a long time ago, science has proven that we carry up to 7 generations of trauma in our DNA. Like that's a fact. Like it's been scientifically proven. And now we know that science is also saying it probably goes back further than that. So I think we already have that piece to go off of. Like we know that we carry trauma in our genes and that this is carried on through multiple generations. And so for me, like the ancestral healing part is like, well, yeah, duh. Like we've got it. Like you're saying, if you've got blood and you're a human, like it's carried on generation of generation of generation of generation. And I think that that's, for me, I believe that part of our soul's existence on this earth is to help with the generational healing and the ancestral healing. That's part of why your soul decided to incarnate on this earth. And that's part of the purpose that we're here to serve, is we learn the lessons, we get the wisdom, and we're able to start, or if not finish, that healing process, like from, generations past.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that ancestral healing is on the very top of the list of a modality, and that actually does go deeper than because I've worked in inner child healing, and I've worked in shadow work, and all of that has its place, and I am who I am because of those healing modalities as well, and I've offered those as well, but when I hit into the ancestral healing of really connecting with the roots and the bloodline, past lives, of course, are, they say it carries through into the memory as well. And so when I would have these sessions and these past lives would come up forward for those on the other side, having these sessions with me, it was almost as if it wasn't confusing. It made sense. They understood what was happening. It wasn't just me sharing or telling them what was going on. They could feel it in their body, and they could feel. And I don't say like the ancestral healings that I do, they don't necessarily like, it's not a session where you're completely healed.
Right,
it's a process, right, where somebody is actually going to begin the processing of whether it's the bloodline of violations, shame, guilt, colonization. It goes deeper because it's it's on the land as well. So you're processing also the bloodline where you came from, and the land of your bloodline, the land of your ancestors. So historical trauma even is going to bleed into your body as well. So I think that this is the root of so much. This is the root. And if because even when you're going through processing and healing the trauma, whether through inner child healing or any of the, hypo or therapy or whatever it's called, but like even whenever you're going into that, like you're processing the trauma that you're going through, of like your present trauma, right? The stuff you went through when you were little. But the ancestral healing goes way back, like you said, like 7 generations. I've done sessions with people where, it went back like centuries, and we're into like the 1600s. We're like way far, whatever's coming up. And it's like, you don't even know this stuff is inside of you. Right. Like, and so it's like, we're processing the trauma now with these present modalities that we have, but ancestral healing is going deeper into the root of it, so that you can now heal the present, like smoother. Not that it's not going to be hard, but it's going to bring your ancestors forward to help you now, because those ancestors are still alive And so they want to guide you and help you as well. So you don't have to do it alone.
Right, right. Yeah, for sure. And I do think that a lot of what people are dealing with, like as you mentioned, like the shame and the guilt and the fear, like those kind of emotions, I really do feel like so the basis of my work, I believe there's this emotional energetic root cause to all the physical things that are happening in our body. And I really do feel like that so many people who are dealing with these chronic conditions, chronic disease, chronic symptoms, I really do feel like so much of it is related to ancestral healing. And I think, I do different somatic work with my clients, and we do, do hypnotherapy and NLP, that kind of thing. And it's funny because sometimes when we're kind of like extracting these emotions, like these emotions that are coming up. And a lot of times my clients are like, I have no idea where this is coming from. And I really feel like, maybe not all the time, but I think like a lot of the time that's this piece. Like there's this ancestral piece where it's like these emotions, like, why is this happening? Where is this coming from? I don't remember experiencing this as a child. Like, I really feel like this is that piece. And for me, that shame, especially. And I had a podcast episode about this, about shame. Shame is an emotion of the sacral center, which correlates with our reproductive organs. And that as women, like this is how we've been conditioned for centuries. You're talking about centuries. For centuries, there's shame around women. And I just read this post a day or so ago talking about Adam and Eve, and how even starting with the very beginning of time, the story of Eve, and how there's all this shame because she's the one that tricked it's like we've been conditioned since the beginning of time that women were, our desires were dangerous, and we're tricksters, and there's shame around all of that. And so I tell my clients this, where they're like, where's this shame coming from? Like, I feel like it's almost impossible, unless you're doing this work like with you, like ancestry, to know exactly where it comes from. But I feel like the shame is something that's so multi-layered and so multi-generational. And I do think, as like now in present times as women, like this is what we're being called to do, is to dismantle this shame that we're born with. I mean, literally centuries and centuries of women just being shamed for everything under the sun. Like I feel like this is the root of so much that affects our physical body.
Yes. And a lot of the stories that come up through, I had a session with a woman who, you never know what's going to come up, but it's like, there's so many stories that can come up from the women in their ancestral lineage, because like you said, it's living there, especially in the womb area. And they cry out and they tell out their stories of like things that they went through. And it's just like, it's their story living inside of us. So yeah, like we may presently go through abandonment, or we may go through certain things that we've gone through presently as a child or whatever age. But sometimes it just feels so heavy, or even heavier, because now it's attached to them as well.
Mm-hmm.
And like their voices just keep going and going and going until somebody finally like hears it and can feel it. And then that's basically what my approach does. My approach goes into to hear their stories, and even if they don't share their story, just the fact that you're allowing, like when you're saying, okay, I'll connect with this bloodline, and it's not that you're connecting with like the bad things that your ancestors have done. Cause I've had, people like, I don't want to connect with my ancestors. They did terrible things.
Right.
And it's not that you have to connect with them like personally one-on-one. Sometimes it's just connecting with those emotions that are stuck in your body that it's continue to pass down and pass down and pass down. And whether you have biological children or not, it just continues until somebody is willing to say, okay, I'm going to hear the story. I may not want to connect with you personally because, yes, they may have done historical terrible stuff. But now in the spirit world, right? They see the pain that it caused. They see the pain that they themselves caused. And I had a woman who her ancestors were coming through, and they literally were saying like, we did terrible things, and we're full of shame and so I was channeling this to her, and I'm like, they're like saying they're really full of shame. They're full of regret. They just like feel so terrible. And like, you would think, oh, that's probably everybody, or a lot of ancestors. But at the end, she tells me, you don't know how bad I have dealt with regret and shame. and her personally, she hadn't done some of the stuff that her ancestors had done. So it's like,
she's like, why am I feeling this? Yeah.
yeah. And she could
Mhm.
be like, well, maybe I just feeling this because, and she'll think of something that she's done, maybe that she can try to figure it out. But in reality, during this session, she was able to see that no, it's actually not you. It's their voices screaming through your body. And sometimes this can turn into physical illnesses and diseases because it's their voices screaming through. So we were but not only did she hear those voices, but thankfully in her session personally, she was able to hear one of her ancestors come forward that he actually helped save it was crazy. It was like he helped to save some historical trauma like genocide. He actually saved some of these people that they were actually going after, and he hit them and he would hide them and he would save them. And what was really cool is those ancestors that lived because her ancestor hit them and kept them alive, they came forward, which had never happened before. I've never had somebody that was outside of the bloodline show up. And I see these people and I'm like, wait a minute, these people are not from your bloodline. Who are they? It was kind of funny.
Wow.
And I was like, wait, hold up. What? And I was confused. And then they channeled their message and they basically told her, we're coming forward. We're just here really fast to say thank you because of your great, whoever he was, great uncle, great grandfather, whatever. He kept us alive. So we were able to have, children and ancestors of our own because of him. And we just wanted to come forward just to thank you. They were just here to say thank you.
That's
thank you
awesome.
because you're from his bloodline. And it was like, so it's not only going in to heal this trauma, you get to be a part of the beautiful things that your ancestors also did.
Absolutely. Yeah. God, that's such a cool story. I would love for you to share kind of how and why you behind you getting into ancestral healing and you being able to kind of channel this and get in touch with that side of the veil. Like, how did that happen for you?
So in 2018, I escaped a religious cult. So I had not connected with ancestors. And for all I know, at that point, it was all witchcraft and bad because the religious doctrine had told me that I couldn't connect with people on the other side, right? They're dead, they're in heaven, or they're in hell. And so when I ended up escaping in 2018 and I went on my own journey and was able to have the freedom to find modalities and healing methods that were against everything they had told me. But I knew what I felt in my body and I went after that for the first time. And so I did. And I began connecting, first foremost with an ancestor that was alive, which is my father. And he was the one that I had been isolated from inside of this cult because they wouldn't allow us to have relationships with unbelievers and outsiders. And so when I left, I reconnected with my father. And it's from my father's side that I do have lineage of Native American blood. And so I was able to connect with him. And I think that was one thing that kind of like woke something up in my blood. And second is when I learned that I actually had an ancestor guide with me. And I named him Bo. So he's a Native American chief. I do have him tattooed on my arm. And he literally came to me in a vision and told me that he was a distant ancestor of mine, like way, 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 way back. And I got to see him through a shamanic journey that a shaman did. And I went into this vision and I seen him and he introduced himself to me because I knew he was a guide, like a spirit guide, but I didn't know he was actually an ancestral guide. And he gave me the vision and he told me like, I'm your grandfather and like, but of course, like a distant one. And I was like, oh my gosh. And he was a protector and a guide for me. He'd been with me since I was born because during a womb healing session, I had to see myself be born physically. And he was there. So I knew that he was there since the very beginning. And during inner child healing, my inner child seen him and said, hey, I remember you. So that's how I knew that he had been with me since the very beginning. So once I connected with him, with my own ancestors, I think that that's when things started I didn't know it was actually one day going to help others reconnect. And eventually I started going into healing past lives and healing ancestral healing with in sessions. I didn't know. I was like, what is going on? What is this? Because I started with doing just like typical spiritual healing. And then it went into that. And when I started seeing the impact, that's when I knew like this is what this is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is what I'm always supposed to be doing. And I feel like because I'm connected with this ancestral guide, Bo, this Native American chief, and he's very reverenced in the spirit world. The only thing that I could contemplate was that when the ancestors of others noticed him, they knew I was a safe place, and they would call out to me by bringing their humans, like that's what I like to call it, their alive humans, to connect with me, because their ancestors were like, we trust her. We can reconnect with our human. And so they began to come. And I mean, it was like when I started doing ancestral healings, it was like boom, 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 boom. Like I had people reaching out and I'm like, what is going on? Like, this is whoa. And it was because I feel like their ancestors were like, yes, her, like we can reconnect. And I'm saying this, I'm getting chills. I can reconnect with her. We can reconnect with our humans through her, because they could see, because the ancestors can see the other ancestors. The land can see your ancestors. And this is why land healing is important as well, because the land recognizes your ancestors. If there's, and honestly, you know, sometimes our ancestors weren't safe people. And so the land can get provoked. It can get, it triggers the land, because the land is breathing, it's alive. And so connecting with your own bloodline is going to help bring healing to the land as well. And this is what's going to help you feel safe, and it's going to help the land feel safe. And this is collective healing. And so connecting with my ancestors, I think this is what really got me into it. And then seeing the impact that it was doing to those that reached out to me and was like, hey, let's do this. I feel I need to do this with you. I knew I was onto something. And the effects that it's done in my own life, it's brought me closer to the land. It's brought me feeling more connected overall. And it also helps me feel like you're not broken. Like, you know, like sometimes a lot of these healing modalities out there, they're very helpful, but you can get into the cycle of feeling like you're broken and like you have to heal this trauma and this trauma. And it's like, I was stuck in that for a while. Like I felt like I needed to heal this, I needed to heal that. And then I would heal it, then it'd be something else. And I just felt like a mess. And like, though you need to heal, yes. But I think when it comes to ancestral healing, you feel more like comforted, and you know that it's not all about you. Like it's their stuff too. And so they ask, like, we're sorry, like we like passing this on, but you're the one that can actually bring a reverence to their stories. And sometimes that's all they want. Sometimes it's
just
not
to be
like
acknowledged.
Yeah, sometimes it's not just like healing.
Right.
Sometimes it's just like, I'm so sorry you went through that.
Yeah.
And then feeling that in your body. And even that's going to make you feel like really peaceful.
Yeah. Yeah. They just want to be heard. I mean, I feel like that. And I say that a lot when I'm doing the somatic work I'm doing, just about specific emotions, like these emotions that are stored in the body, just they want to be acknowledged and they want to be heard. And I feel like that's the same thing with the ants. It's like the stories you were telling. It's like they just want their story to be heard. Can you just hear my story and acknowledge my story and let me share my story? And just that acknowledgement and like you said, just feeling their story, like that's all. It just needs to be said. And I love what you said about the land. And it's so funny because we watch, my husband and I, well, yeah, we watch a bunch of different things about like spirits and stuff. And I'm telling you, anytime there's something crazy going on, it's like, what Native American burial ground did you build your thing on? Because the land is angry. And I fully believe that. I fully believe. And somebody posted something not too long ago, because our country is just a hot mess right now. They're like, oh, kind of like you built a whole civilization on a Native American burial ground. Like, I wonder why the land is so angry.
It's true.
But I feel everything you're saying about the land. But I think the important thing, and I love what you said about feeling like there's always something to heal, because there is. I mean, let's be honest, there's always something to heal. But I think the ancestral piece is, like you were saying earlier, it's that, you know, we talk about getting to the root cause on this show all the time. It really is that root, because it's not even about just So I think sometimes too, people want to know the thing, like what's the thing that I need? Like what is the one story that needs to be, I need to figure out where this one specific thing happened that caused, but to what you were just saying, sometimes it's just hearing the story and acknowledging and listening to the stories. They just want their story to be heard, and they want you to understand why these emotions that you are experiencing in your body, like how that happened, like let me just share why this has been passed on. And I think that's the cool thing about, when we do any type of energy healing is that energy knows no time or space. And so you're able to heal past and future generations when you do the work and when you are aware, your awareness of this and your intentionality with the healing process. It's healing past and present. So you're able to acknowledge the stories of your ancestors, and then you're also able to create a new paradigm, right? And like create a new story for whether, like you said, whether you have kids or not, it's still helping future generations. And there's a ripple effect. Like I love that you said these in that one story you said about these other people's ancestors came into this one healing. It's like your story has a ripple effect. It's not just about your
Right.
ancestors.
Percent. Yeah. And I love somatic work too. I just want to share that because somatic work actually helped me a lot during my healing journey too. I didn't do somatic work till like towards the end. In the beginning, I did a lot of inner child healing, and that's what helped me so much. But somatic healing um, helped me to start getting out of the body because
Mm-hmm.
the other ones were going really into my spirit, and I needed that. But when I started doing somatic work, it began to help release it from my body. So all of it is connected.
Yeah,
I feel like
totally.
probably the somatic work helped me be able to go deeper into the ancestral work because without it, I would have not been able to go into the body because
Sure.
that's what happens is when you're too much into the spiritual aspects of it, you forget that you're still a human and you still need to go into the body. And that's something that I didn't know much of. And it wasn't until I began doing somatic work, that's when it was able to get into the body like, hey, I'm a human and I got to go into the body as well, not
Right.
just the spirit. And
Yeah.
I think that could be also another reason of why the ancestral healing, I was able to drop into the ancestral healing uh, because it was now the body was now feeling safe.
Right, exactly.
So I
Yeah.
the somatic healing, I recommend that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, well, like you said, it all goes together. And I think that's, conventional medicine, it has separated our body and compartmentalized everything. And like you said, because I think, the deeper the healing or the deeper the somatic work, the more you're going to get out of the ancestral work, the more you get out of the instant, like it really does go together. And you have to be able to be in tune and in touch with your body to get the
Yeah.
most out of the ancestral work because it's got to leave the body. Like you've got to be able to help it leave the body. So yeah, I'm so glad you said that because I think it does work so well together. So for those who are listening and things you're saying are resonating and they're like, oh, this isn't something I've tried before. Like this is something that I feel like is a part of my healing journey. How would you recommend, like what are some things people can do, like first steps? How can we get started with our own ancestral healing?
I would say to be like if you've never been connected with any ancestors, um, and it doesn't have to be like recent ones neither. Like it doesn't have to be like a grandfather or grandma. This can be from like centuries and decades. Just beginning to speak it out and just say, I don't know who you are, but I would love to connect to any of the stories that are inside of my body. That is impacting me today, whether it's like 1,000 years ago or generations ago. What is it like? Who are you? What are your stories? And just like knowing that it's not going to happen right away, but they want to know that they can speak through you, and they want to know that you you can be somebody that they can that you're going to listen basically,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of their stories have been told and forgotten. Many of their during their lifetime they told somebody and they weren't believed, or many of them went passed on to the other side without nobody ever knowing their pain and their stories, and even some of the amazing stories. um so I would just begin to like speak that out and let them know, I don't know who you are, but I would like to connect with you. If there's anything in my body that's um, impacted me today, that whether, is the trauma and pain, but also connecting with uh, the power and the beauty and the things that my ancestors did. Because even if like some of your ancestors were doing like horrific stuff, there had to have been an ancestor somewhere in there that was like, I don't want to partake in that.
Mm-hmm.
They were murdered because they chose to speak up or something like that. So you want to bring in, like, that's going to be there as well, like that power of, maybe that's why you're connected to wanting to speak up. Maybe there's something inside of you that wants to speak up for injustices or marginalized people suffering. You want to speak up, but you don't know why, right? Because you're not personally impacted by it. It could be because there is somebody in your ancestral lineage that did speak up, or they wanted to, or they so finding that out. And even if you may not find it out like physically, right, like going through your lineages or DNA ancestry, but just beginning to speak that out and let them know that you're wanting to, that's an easy, free step to do.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. And I think from there, the next step would be to dive deeper. I will tell you, I explained a lot of this in the intro, but I did a session with Mandy, and like she was saying, it's not like a one time is gonna like fix everything. It's like a one time quick fix type thing, which I think y'all all know that, but just it's worth saying. But what was so interesting is like one of the things that came out, this woman, an ancestor of mine that came out in this session I did with Mandy, there was there was a story with her, and she got pregnant, and there was a lot of shame around that, and then she had to hide the baby, and she was kind of on the run and couldn't. And the story itself, and Mandy felt the emotions of this ancestor that she brought forward, which she says is not something that happens all the time. But the interesting thing is, it's interesting to see like what happens after the session, right? Like your ancestor comes forward and he or she shares their story. And, I can't say I've ever, had to hide a baby in my life. Like the story was like, I've never experienced that. But the emotions that she's there was fear, there was shame, there was a fear of being seen. All of that, like within that, because it was a while ago. All of that within the past couple months, like so many instances of that have come up in my life. Like it's crazy. The being seen, being visible, afraid to be seen. The shit we just talked about shame. The shame thing comes up. So and I think that just speaks to everything you were just saying, Mandy. It's like your ancestors want their stories to be told, and there's patterns of this, whether it's the exact story, whether you're part of genocide or murder or whatever. Like some of those things aren't resonant with where you are in your life, but it's the emotions that were felt during these events. Like those are the things that are passed down, and it's those feelings and those emotions that want to be held or felt and heard and experienced and released. And you will find patterns of that. Like you will experience, like you will see where this shows up. And so I felt like all these instances of things showing up after a session where it was just more evidence where it's like, oh, here's where it's showing up. Here's another opportunity for you to heal this thing. Here's another opportunity for you to heal this thing. So it's just crazy. Like it's just mind blowing.
Oh, I love that. I'd love to hear more on how, the after effects of the ancestral healing, because that does happen. Yeah. It's the processing.
Yeah, exactly. The processing. And I think that's the thing. It's like the ancestral healing is not, and I guess it could be, right? I'm sure you have experience that where it could be the thing that like shifts things for people. But I do think a lot of times it's just the catalyst to like start the processing and start the being more intentional and more aware of things that are coming up. So I think a lot of times it's just that. So anyway, I loved the session, was awesome. So I would highly recommend a session with Mandy. And Mandy, I do have one more question I want to ask you before we go, but can you let everybody know where they can find out more about you and maybe booking a session with you?
Yeah. So my website is divinemandyoracle.com, and I'm on Facebook and Instagram as well. I get a lot of messages on there. So at Divine Mandy Oracle. So you can go on there, and then that's to book a session and learn more about me. And then I also have my own podcast at Mandy Speaks Up. And I do want to a good book that I want to recommend is It Didn't Start With You by Mark Wolin. Mark Wolin. It Didn't Start With You.
Okay.
That book. Whoa.
Yeah.
This was before I got into really ancestral healing. And this book, It Didn't Start With You, is crazy. It's how inherited family trauma shapes who we are and how to end the cycle. But he goes into how he literally like worked with people that he would meet, like tripped out stories,
Wow.
how like one woman, she didn't understand why every night when she'd go to bed she felt like she was on fire. Come to find out, her ancestors were the ones that had went into like the Holocaust and were put into ovens.
Holy cow.
And it was like in her
That's
body.
crazy.
So even little things like that, like
Yeah.
where like she would feel like she was on fire and didn't know was,
Yeah.
and so that book is a really it's
Okay,
really
I'm gonna have to
eye
get that
opening.
one. Yeah, that's right up my alley. I'm gonna have to get that one. Okay, it didn't start with you. Write it down. Go find it. That sounds amazing. Okay, the last question. Oh, of course, I'll put the links to everything Manny just said in the show notes. So the link to her website and all that, social media, so you can go check out her and message her for a session. The last question that I want to ask you that I like to ask everybody. What do you think is the most important thing you can do to live with purpose?
Connect with your roots, connect with those who came before you. That's going to give you a purpose. You're going to feel like you're on top of the mountain, man. You're going to feel like your story matters because their story matters, and you're going to feel less alone, which you're going to feel more fire and power to do what it is that you're here to do. Because a lot of times their stories have a lot to do with what your purpose is here to do, or even the things that you're, like I said, standing up for, fighting for. It's them working through you, them cheering you on. And I think that gives you like the desire to keep going and to keep standing up and speaking up and fighting for those around you that they're being silenced.
Yeah, I love that. That's so powerful. Thank you so much for this, Mandy, and for sharing your gift with the world, for finding your gift and sharing it. I mean, I know that these spiritual gifts, I do think that we're all given with spiritual gifts, but we don't all know how to use them, or, so I just thank you for discovering yours and sharing it with us and just being this really powerful voice to the stories that need to be told from our ancestors. So thank you.
Thank you for inviting me on here, and if anybody's listening and they feel like they don't know what their purpose is, I was there. I know I escaped a religious cult. I didn't know where the hell I was going. I didn't know what I was going to do. And if I would look back now, I would just hug her and tell her, like, you just hold on, man. You just get through this shit and you're going to rise up on top of that mountain.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm doing now. So you can do it too.
Yeah, I love it. It's so powerful. Thank you
Thank
so much,
you.
Mandy.